Thanks everybody for joining. I'm gonna mute for another minute, but if we want to call the meeting to order, I'm gonna yell at the dog. So
Perfect.
All right, we can take a roll. Commissioner Castillo-White,
Here.
Chair Janssens, who is here. Commissioner Stevens. Here. Commissioner Kester. I see you.
Here.
I suppose no longer Vice Chair Allen. Commissioner Hill. Here. And Commissioner Steffen.
Here.
okay.
Nice.
Do we have any public that are available for that are interested in commenting?
We do not.
Okay. All right. Then we will move on to the item. I'm closing a few things out of here. So our next is our discussion in establishing the historic district. Did everyone get their packets?
We sent an agenda, but not no other announcements. So just the agenda was sent out.
Okay, I thought it said that packets were going to be going out, and I did not get one. So,
Some of us got the packets and some didn't. And Aaron was one that didn't. This was a couple months ago
Oh.
with the
yeah, and those
signage. I think that's what she's talking about.
Oh. Okay.
sent out a resent, and I did not get one. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Liam.
All right. Thank you for for the reminder.
Yeah. So I think we are kind of turning it over to what the timeline is for and what the next steps are for establishing a historic district. I'm just going to step away for a second.
Yeah. We have a presentation for you all, kind of outlining next steps. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. See. Yeah, it's okay. So this is kind of a higher level, like broad look at how we see things moving forward based on our discussion. So to start with a little background, in the fall of 2024, staff presented a street topper concept to HLC consistent with the downtown area's tourism and visitor branding efforts. While the committee liked the street topper concept, it was thought that the design reading historic Troutdale was a blanket approach and didn't necessarily capture a particular place and timeline of Troutdale's history. Then HLC discussed and wanted the street topper to call out a particular local historic district, Hungry Hill, which is Troutdale's first and second plat. Staff members returned to HLC in late 2024 and stated that the committee's idea is feasible. However, it would take a bit of work because the city's development code does not have criteria to determine or establish a local historic district. Staff said they would need to bring back a work plan on how to proceed with a code amendment to the development code in early 2025. So there's two steps we'll go through. The first being amend the development code to create criteria establishing historic districts. And two, after the code is amended, make an application for the Hungry Hill Historic District.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
On that last slide. Amend development code to create criteria for establishing historic district, or does that actually establish the word historic district?
For criteria establishing.
Criteria that would be needed to establish them is what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yeah.
Thank you. I thought that's what it meant, I was just making sure. This is Jim, by the way.
So these are snippets from the current code and the development code. They're both purpose statements. So the first one is section 4.200, that is in our overlay section, where if you read it, it says the purpose of our historic landmark protection. This section is to provide procedures to identify, designate, and preserve historic resources, including buildings, structures, sites, objects, or districts, which are of historical, architectural, cultural significance to the community, and to provide appropriate means for their protection and preservation consistent with state preservation laws. The city and the HLC shall support the enforcement of all state laws related to historic preservation. So obviously there's some words highlighted. The key takeaway is through this historic landmark protection, the development code is sort of authorizing us to identify and designate districts. And in section 6.500, historic landmarks, for context, this is within the application section. So anything anyone can apply for, so it'd be like a site development review, a partition, a subdivision, whatever. This is included in there as actions that HLC can do. So the purpose statement, it reads very similar to the first one, so I'll just say there's highlighted words that say to identify and designate districts. So if we actually look at the options under applications, which HLC can do, there are 4 types of applications, and each one comes with a different purpose, procedure type, and approval criteria. So currently it is historic landmark designation, removal of a historic landmark designation, alterations to a historic landmark, or demolition or relocation of a historic landmark. So despite the code recognizing that identifying and designating a historic district are included in the purpose of the historic landmark protection and applications, there's no guidance on how to establish a new historic district. So that brings us to step 1. So far, are there any questions about sort of the logic we're following so far? Sweet. So step 1 being code amendment. In section 6.515 of the code, staff proposes adding standards to how to designate and establish a local historical district. So we read off those 4 types: designating historic landmark, removal historic landmark, and then we're adding this C, historic district designation. We think it fits right after the historic landmark designation pretty well. That seems to be a natural fit. And then shifting the other existing 2 down to D and E. So to do that, staff would need a draft code language for the proposed 6.515C. Historic district designation would follow a format, a code format similar to the other 4 application types. So for example, I hope that shows up okay for you guys online. It doesn't show it up for us very well here, but I can read it. So yeah, the historic landmark designation. So there's 3 steps or 3 kind of elements to it. There's a purpose, there's a procedure type, and approval criteria. So when we add in the historic district designation, we'll go through and create the purpose, procedure type, and approval criteria. So it falls in line with the existing actions. To get an idea on what the process and timeline would look like.
I'm sorry, could you
Yeah.
please go back one? I just wanted to read
Sure.
what we do have currently there for approval.
I can read it
criteria.
out, the whole thing, if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, thanks.
So there's kind of 3 bullet points. The first one being purpose. Historic landmark designation may be applied to any historic resource, whether or not it is listed in the city's current inventory of historic resources. And then number 2 states what procedure you go through to designate. So this particular act would be a type 3 procedure, as described in section 2.060 of this code, shall apply to historic landmark designation application. The decision-making authority is the Historic Landmarks Commission. And then 3 would be the criteria on how you'd actually approve something. So in order to approve a historic landmark designation application, the Historic Landmark Commission shall make findings of fact based on the following National Register of Historic Places criteria to evaluate whether the historic resource merits a historic landmark designation as follows. Historic resource must be over 50 years of age. Historic resource must also meet at least one of the following. Be associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of local, state, or national history, or be associated with the lives of persons, organizations, or groups of people significant in local, state, or national history, or embody distinctive characteristics of an architectural style, period, or method of construction, or that represents the work of a master, or that possesses high artistic values, sorry, I'm moving something, or that represents a significant and distinguishable entity whose components may lack individual distinction or be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So the new item to how to establish a district would follow a similar structure to what I read out.
Okay,
And
I'm sorry, this is Diane, what you read out is what we currently have? Or
Just
was
to
it a draft?
yes, so this designates like a historic structure.
like
or-
a property or
For the city
like
of
a park or
Troutdale,
not.
within the
Yeah,
city of Troutdale.
correct.
And this is already written, this is currently in our codes.
Yep.
I believe it's very similar to what SHPO has.
Yes, I think it's exactly what SHPO has.
So
And who is that you're speaking of?
the State Historic Preservation Office.
Okay, I was just wondering what that was because, the parks is talking about, approval of a trail. And while that discussion was going on, there was a lot of people in that meeting that were from the, or have been in the Troutdale Historical Society members.
Mhm.
And then there was some questions that came up, and including with Sharon Nesbitt. There was 2, Tibbetts. Who were we speaking of? What did that person do? The history that the state may have and the history that the city of Troutdale has. So I was just wondering about that because like as part of a criteria is possibly to include the Troutdale Historical Society, since we have that resource for additional research when something like this comes up, to make sure there isn't any accurate and
Mhm.
Did you get where I'm
Yeah,
going with
like
this?
to avoid
Okay.
like discrepancies or inaccuracies.
In previous applications, they have to do, it's part of the application process,
Mhm.
is getting the full history background, and they can use the Historical Society to do that.
Okay, can use, but it would be nice if it was part of the findings. I'm just throwing it out there for now. Do you know what I mean? Like, use what you use, but also to get the holistic pictures, like if there's some stuff that we have in Sharon's brain on the PDFs or the mappage or whatever we have, there might be some additional information to get that full story of whomever, if it's person, place, or thing, that we're looking at, because that's what we're running into with Mary Tibbetts. There's 2. And then it's like, where's the mappage? Where did she live? Did she live on the Sandy? Was Indian John, this John, that was her father? There's just, I'm just saying that, if we have the opportunity to get Troutdale's, anything pertaining to Troutdale,
Mhm.
that it just might be nice to have that included, added on as a, not to say that people wouldn't holistically or naturally do that anyway, but if you're just thinking like years down as we have less historians or less people that, you know, I just feel it's a good, check, you know, check for accuracy or contribution to the conversation.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
an excellent comment.
Thank you.
and I will say, while we're discussing like our like Hungry Hill district, we will absolutely get there. And you guys will be involved in like, obviously checking our work, and it'll be a collaborative process. And so far, these would just be like the framework to even think about establishing a district. So the contents, the nuts and bolts, what the flavor of it would look like, that's more like step 2 that we'll get to, which I think will hopefully cover a couple boxes you mentioned.
Okay.
But if not, we can discuss.
Nick, are we gonna talk about those things tonight?
On a broad level, not like in a deep discussion type way. As like outlining how it works, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. I'm just, timeline of, do you guys have a timeline that you're going to suggest?
Okay, yeah, we're gonna get there here in just a minute.
Thanks.
Question,
Yeah.
does SHPO have this criteria
Mhm.
for districts? as it did for-
It is essentially the same. SHPO says to designate a district. It's the same process as a landmark designation, except you would include an inventory of all properties within the district
Ooh,
that you identify to be as like contributing, essentially. So it's
Is there a percentage of,
content, but it's a lot of parts.
okay.
Nick, is there a percentage that, that they refer to, or Erica, is there, I think Erica's there also. Is there a percentage that they require for a district of historical structures or not?
I don't think so, right?
I don't think so, but we can double check that with SHPO, but I don't think so.
Just a side note, on number 3, item 4, now for a place to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places, they first need to go through the process of getting their local and then state, historic designations prior to applying for the national historic settlement.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's kind of funny how it says catch-22.
Yeah, a little bit of a backwards.
Yeah, but if somebody has already gotten that, jumped forward and gotten that because these things weren't in place earlier, then it automatically jumps them, that makes sense.
That makes sense.
All right, any other questions for this section right here? Great. So as terms of process and timeline for this proposed amendment, it would involve presenting the idea to the appropriate city committees and council. So HLC should present this idea to the Planning Commission. It can be presented at their next regular meeting on March 12th, 2025. A question for the commission we could pose is the idea of creating standards to establish a local historic district acceptable? What questions would they have, and do they have any feedback they can offer us? After presenting to the Planning Commission, and seeking feedback, the HLC should present this idea to City Council, tentatively in April. After presenting to Council, the HLC should present the idea to the CAC for community input, tentatively in May. And code amendments, they're type 4 review, which require Planning Commission to make a recommendation to Council for approval. So the process, once we kind of get input from those different commissions and committees, would be a Planning Commission hearing in June and a Council hearing in July, which would require 2 different hearings.
Let's move on to step 2.
Great, so that's, I appreciate that we can present to the planning commission and then just seek feedback and then go right into council. That's great.
Sorry, I keep playing with this little toolbar that Zoom gives me. So for step one, the action item would be HLC may direct staff to draft code language for review in April. And this would allow for, if planning commission has any feedback for us, we could include that in that draft language.
Question, would there be any cause for the planning commission to ask for that code language prior to presenting to them and moving forward to council?
Any changes to the development code are best kind of brought to them first. They are,
Okay,
yeah.
Yep.
Great. Come on. All right, and so we have step two. So kind of the nuts and bolts, the application to designate local historic district. So this would take the place of an overlay. So once, assuming step one, we get the code language, the code amendment passed, adopted. Once the code language is amended on how to establish a local historical district, the city can submit an application to create the Hungry Hill Historical District. So that kind of leads us with discussion questions for future meetings. None we need answered right now, but things just to keep in mind and generally ponder would be, first, determine the goal or objective of the historic district. What do we want it to accomplish, or what's its purpose? We'd want to compile the history, any relevant architecture and cultural significance of the proposed district. We want to formally vote on the district boundaries. I know we've discussed that a lot, but not in the sense of creating a motion. We want to confirm that the district will continue to be regulated on a property by property basis. So that's currently how we regulate historic landmarks with owner opt-in. And if that's no longer how you guys feel, then how would we like to regulate it?
And maybe we don't. That's, we'll come back with, options and choices for the group to review and discuss.
okay. In general, though, if you live in a historic district, you live in a historic district. I just don't think that but it doesn't mean that your property is necessarily a historic landmark. I think that those two things are getting confused in that bullet.
Yeah, with the language, I agree with you. I think it's a little wordy just to say, should things exist as is, or should we regulate more? Would be an easier way to interpret what I wrote.
Well, I'm, say more because I just don't, confirm doesn't continue to be regulated on a property by property basis. When I see that, if you put a period after basis, I think, yeah, each property is just evaluated or assessed normally. The historic district should have no impact to the property owner unless, of course, the district becomes a highly desirable place to live, and it's a separate, it's not anything levied by the city or anything else. That is simply a separate real estate issue. But I don't think that there should be any additional regulation placed on people just because they are in a historic district.
We agree with you, and I think that's been the consensus of the commission. If the language of that bullet point doesn't convey that, apologies, but it was meant to.
Well, it seems ambiguous. It throws it up in the air, I think. Only because you've got the last part with owner opt-in, if not how, that starts.
That was just saying they have to say yes. You can't just choose properties to be designated without their opt-in.
Yeah, but the properties, again, are not designated. They are simply within.
The boundary.
The only way a property is designated a historic landmark is if it goes through a historic landmark review process and there's an application. Being in a district, people have no, if it's like, do you live in Gresham or Portland or Troutdale? It's identified by specific boundaries and that has nothing to do with.
I think we're saying the same exact thing, but we're using different language that's scaring each other. I agree with everything you're saying. If you could see me, I've been nodding.
We'll work better on our language, Aaron, for sure.
Okay, I'll let it go. Next one.
All right. Determine if the district will exist on the local level, or if we want the district to be recognized by, SHPO or at the national level, which would entail kind of more effort on our parts. And essentially what kind of community engagement efforts are necessary. So sort of brainstorming how we want to involve citizens, other committees, commissions, that type of thing. So a kind of broad overview on what this process would look like. Very similar to the adoption process of the code amendment of step 1. We would have consensus from HLC on historic district boundaries, committee and council update on future application to be made to create the Hungry Hill Historic District. The city would then create an application, planning commission hearing. There would be a planning commission hearing and a recommendation to council, city council hearing process, again, a minimum of 2 hearings. And we anticipate that being through summer and fall of this year. And that's it. That's it for as far as a timeline goes and kind of how we foresee this going forward.
Would you be able to send that to us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Nick and Eric. I really appreciate that. Can you speak a little bit more about, I'm thinking about a work session for us to accomplish the work that we need to do. I'm thinking about when best to plan that and would like to get that on everybody's radar.
I'm sorry, I was writing down a note.
No problem. I'm wondering about, you had basically a bulleted list of things to do. And one of those things was for the HLC to actually accomplish that we needed to review the boundaries, identify the boundaries. If you could go back to that slide.
Yeah, I can.
So that's in step 2, would be identifying the boundaries.
Okay. I would just like to get that, maybe if we follow the timeline so far, looks like March will be presenting to the planning commission, April to council, and then we will need to be moving with the district overlay work. So I'm just trying to determine if we identify that should be May or yeah. Then it goes to the CAC for the May.
Yeah, so Aaron, so next month in March, what staff will have for the HLC next month at the March meeting, we'll have some draft language for the committee to review. So we'll kind of kick off that process next month in March. And kind of like at the same time, we're going to these, committees and reaching out and letting them know what we're doing and getting their feedback and input. And then if we need to change any of the code, we will during those couple months before we take it to planning commission. this process is very iterative and collaborative with different city committees, so we can get everybody kind of on board and on the same page as to, why this particular, issue has been brought up and championed by the committee. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I heard you say that going back to the planning commission, which I don't see that there.
Okay, so we'll go back to the planning commission for a public hearing in June.
Okay, in June, thank you. And
And-
at that, we should have all of,
Recommendation to city council, and city council will hold hearings in July.
great. I love that timeline.
This is Frank. Do you need a formal motion, or are you guys good with the direct staff to draft code?
I don't think we need a formal motion by the committee. I think, I'm hearing consensus from the committee,
So am I. I
and
just wanna make sure.
that's good enough.
For formalities, you guys are good? I'm good.
Yeah.
One thing we probably want to think about formulating very, very early in the process is that community engagement bit. And the main reason I think we need to get on top of that early is because of that language confusion that was expressed early on in this discussion, is because there's going to be there's going to be a lot of people that hear this and don't even read the language once we even when we get it. So staying on top of precisely what this means to the wider public and to other communities and planning commission and council and everybody is going to, I think, be of critical importance.
Good points. Good points indeed. Yeah, it's, while I think that most people will embrace it, the fear of some unknowns will be concerning to people, and it's good to have those speaking points addressed early on, so, yes.
Conveniently enough, a lot of this is going to be, and we're going to be in the middle of this in our summer downtown event season. So there will be a fair number of opportunities in the middle, and not that I'm saying we should wait that long, but there will be a fair number of opportunities as things like First Friday and Arts Festival and stuff like that get rolling, that to have touch points with the public downtown.
Agreed, Adrian.
Adrian, this is Frank. So I was taking notes while you're saying that. So I came up with social media, so maybe involving, is it Kevin? Metcalf, right? Mooney.
Yeah, not Mika.
Because he covers the Facebook, Twitter, all those things that I have no idea how to use. And then you mentioned First Fridays, so I think that's a great idea. Potential for is that with, who would we coordinate if we had to do like a booth potentially?
You can coordinate with us.
Okay.
We've been, last year we had a booth at every First Friday.
Yeah, and then Arts Festival, and then Troutdale Champion comes out, like as soon as we could get something in there, that would be great. Adrian, any thoughts, or anyone else on the committee?
Nope.
Agree.
We got it.
I was thinking that champion would be a good way to just kind of cover a lot of our bases, because it's so well read in Troutdale, and then also through the CAC, of course. All of the places that you mentioned, Frank, are good and appropriate, I think. So so we can get to that and let people know, and hopefully they'll be excited about it.
Adrian, do you think that would cover the I mean, we kind of have a rough idea of the district now and the population in that district area. Do you think we need to go door, I mean, what kind of level do you want to get in on community engagement here?
Well, everything you said is what I had immediately at mind. I think once, anything deeper than that is gonna be pretty intensive and would potentially have some additional costs associated with it even. But I know that that's one of the things that the CAC as a committee is going to be over the next few months trying to formulate some of those avenues for the deeper community engagement for things exactly like this. So, but yeah, I think in the immediate term, I think what you've got is what you listed off is pretty well covered the options that are available to us.
This is Jim. I have a couple thoughts. There's a certain population that lives within this boundary that maybe some of them are not connected very well. A door-to-door campaign would be probably the way to touch each of them, or at least get a flyer on the doorstep. That, I know that's an intensive process. But it might be helpful to do something like that, so that group, the fears that they might initially have might be allayed by a conversation about what this really means, because they may think that somehow this is affecting their property directly when it doesn't necessarily, unless they want it to become a historic land.
I agree. I think that if we just get the facts out to people, I think that will allay a lot of concerns, and I think it'll really simplify everything. Oops, sorry, other comments, concerns?
Diane, do we, have we talked about approximately how many homes are within the Hungry Hill area that we're kind of targeting? Because I know we said maybe not the ones that were closer to Strawberry Meadows. I'm not sure. I kind of looked at one map, but roughly the consensus of what is Hungry Hill. Do we know approximately how many homes? Because if it's not very many, then maybe we could just do the mailer. So we could say, we could have something nice that would be appropriate for the Troutdale champion anyway, but to make sure that they do read it with this wonderful opportunity, and we're just honoring, this plat in this area, and then, give a little bit of the history, what would be a article within the champion or our Facebook anyway, say, don't reinvent it, but, and then say there's opportunities to learn more about our conversations that will be had follow the planning committee, follow the CAC, and so on, and then that way it's just a good guideline for anybody that wants to know about what's going on, that can go out to whomever.
This is Jim again. I think that's a great idea. Mailing is a great idea.
Yeah.
There'll be some cost to it, but it seems to make sense to get people. That, and then I think we need to probably say who or what, how do you contact somebody for more information? I don't know if that's a staff thing or if it's an email address or something. I don't know.
Or it could be got questions, come to our meeting.
There you go.
That way you get people, we always want to try to get people to walk down here. That's why thank you for the First Fridays and all that. That's just awesome for the businesses and everything else. We want them to get in the habit of coming, gathering, being community, learn more, and get more involved. And so, that'd be a good opportunity.
Is it possible that a mailer would go to the homeowner, and if they're renting, the renter would see it?
That is possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, is that a concern?
The person most likely to have concern about this would be, I would assume, the property owner, because they may think, oh, this is layering something on, but some education on what it really is might help.
Well, and when the type 4 application actually hits the process, all of the affected property owners are going to get notified of that application automatically, correct? But again, you don't want to wait that long for them to find out the first time.
Right, I think doing the mail, like doing a mailer and speaking about this in plain human English and not planning jargon. Because a lot of times those notices are planning jargon just because of the way it's set up.
Planners talk.
Well, state, regulations and whatnot that we have to follow, processes that we have to follow.
Because, Diane, again, because we're just basically recognizing, as far as they're concerned, an area.
Yep.
And with no legal ties.
Yep.
And celebrating it, celebrating our history,
Exactly.
and that's it. The end.
Exactly.
That's right.
The end.
Mhm.
And you are lucky enough to be in this cool area that we're assigning a name that's always been there. We're just recognizing it and having some cool signage. The end.
That's right.
Right?
Okay, you summed it up perfectly.
If you'd
thank
like
you.
to be our spokeswoman.
No. Yeah, I taught sixth grade level. You're welcome.
Okay, that's great. I think sounds like everybody's kind of on the same page of how to proceed forward. I never know whether I'm on mute or not when I'm talking. Not kidding.
We hear you.
Great, super. Next steps, and sounds like we have consensus, so doesn't need to be a vote at this time. My screen has changed dramatically since the PowerPoint. I don't know why. So I'm trying to change my view. But I think we have, next, do we have anything else on this issue?
Yeah, we have some staff communication items to go over.
But I was wondering more about the HLC district. Do we have anything else before we move on to the staff communications?
As far as staff goes, that's all we have.
Okay, anybody else from the HLC? Okay, the only person I can really see the face is Adrian, so I'm gonna take that as consensus there. So, okay, great, let's turn it back over to staff, thanks.
All right, the first one that I kind of missed on this agenda is Carol is now at council, and she was our vice chair. So yeah, so next meeting, start thinking about who you want for vice chair, so we can have some elections. The other item, I've been getting our certified local government application together. There is an item where I have to provide, I'll put this in quotes when I say it, copies of resumes of appointed commission members. A resume is a word that's a lot more formal than what they actually want. It's a form that's a couple items just asking about your background and interest in historic preservation. I have paper copies of that, and I have a PDF that I can send to you if that's a preferred option. But for our application to be complete, I do need that form filled out by all of our appointed commission members.
Okay. Great. And when do you need those back by?
Honestly, by next meeting would be perfect. If you guys can organize and get them fast, that'd be great too. But it shouldn't be something you guys stress over to get to me.
Okay.
I think signage? Interpretive signage?
Oh, yes.
It's like, I don't got that to say about that.
All right, so the city, we have been working on an interpretive signage project for interpretive signs along the new Sharon Nesbitt Heritage Park area. And we plan to kind of bring the first round of what these signs would look like to the Parks Advisory Committee and also this committee to review kind of the first design. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that that's coming down the pipeline here, probably in, I want to say maybe probably at your April meeting, we'll have that first design draft ready for your review. And we will have we have planned for 6 interpretive signs along that trail and park system. That will tell the story, like conveying the story of Troutdale. So, yeah, and we'll be showing you the first design, and we want any input, you know, seeking input from both the Parks Committee and this committee. The more input, the better.
We're seeking our input on which portion, sorry, Erica?
I would consider your input on the interpretive signage project. We'll have the design, so it'll have like, you know, pictures and then captions and then, you know, that some like historical, you know, background information about kind of like our themes for each sign.
Is that something you'll present to us, or are you seeking input prior to or after, or kind of midway through when you've got it drafted out?
So in April, we'll have kind of our first design, I'm crossing my fingers, we'll have our first design draft of all those signs ready for the first review. And so we want to have a first review with this committee and our Parks Committee. And then I believe we have like 3 rounds of review, like before we get to final sign concept.
Okay, great. That's great. It's really exciting to see all of this moving forward. Thank you so much for all your work and for listening to us in the first place.
Yes, of course.
Hey, this is Diane. Erin and everybody else. Currently partially working on the signage. They had come up with some great concepts and ideas and different panels to cover different areas of history. Len, Sharon, I, Chris, and other historical society members are also contributing to that. I believe the Grand Mon Tribe is as well. So there's a number of people, and then Chris Garza's helping as well because he's pulling up amazing photos, and a lot of that history and the conceptual ideas were taken from Sharon's book. So a lot of the history and themes were taken from that as well. It's exciting, and the people that they picked to do composition and put all this stuff together in the comments that would stick out and stuff, they do a really fabulous job. Rip Caswell also had noted that they do well, so it's exciting. This is fun. So just letting you know a little bit about some of the people that are involved in that.
Great, great. Okay.
All right, and I have one other item. Chris Ann in our planning department, she's working with Molly King. There's a community walk at McMiniman's Edgefield, March 13th at 2 p.m. I can send the information to you guys through email instead of just telling it to you guys and hoping you remember. That might be a better route. But if you want to walk with your community around Edgefield, March 13th is the day.
Great, thanks. Thank you. Anything else from staff?
That's all we got.
Okay. Before we wrap up the meeting, is there anybody that has any additional questions for staff?
I do. I'm just curious about some of the, developments or lack of in some of the construction going on. As far as Old City Hall and the pub, I hear they've left. Is that not true?
We're working with the development team to get that project done. The pub folks who were working with the development team,
Waiting.
away days, they, may or may not be moving, to that location. I think, that might just be still up in the air.
The building's still being developed.
Yes, we're certainly working with the developer, to get that project completed.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
The other question, move, they are gone, is that correct?
I wouldn't say they're gone. What came out in the media, they're going through Chapter 11 bankruptcy, so they're restructuring, and that's all we know. After that restructuring, they may come back and finish that project. But I don't know because
Last question, and I know you're probably not the people to ask, but maybe you have some insight. Buxton, when we were here Tuesday night at a city council meeting, it was crazy traffic. I had to come across second as well as I think Aaron did also. It's very dark. Pedestrians are at risk. I witnessed a near collision, and as a pedestrian, it was frightening. So I'm wondering, is there something going to happen right up here that can make that area a little safer? When I'm coming down today, they were two large trucks, not just pickups, unless they had dualies on, but large, parking on both sides of Buxton. They had to cross the center line to get enough room to pass, so I had to stop and let them through. To me, that's not safe. So is there something that's gonna happen so that coming down Buxton is not risking your life? I'm being a little dramatic there, but I don't know if you know anything, lighting, I don't know, whatever, no parking or limited parking.
So I can tell you right now, we're in the middle of a downtown parking management plan and strategy. That plan, I know Frank he attended our last technical advisory committee, and these meetings are open to the public. And that plan is putting together some strategies about parking in downtown, what things the city council can consider to increase parking safety, pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, and really talks about that parking management and how it can occur downtown. More signage, maybe we need more signage that says no parking within 10 feet of the driveway or access. Maybe it's painting the curbs red. Maybe it's better enforcement. So there's a whole list of kind of these strategies that the city can look at and implement in the future.
Because it's only gonna get worse
Mm-hmm.
as that is filled across the street here. And it's already a huge problem.
It's important to note that Buxton is county road. That's not city of Troutdale. It's important to note that. So
Yes.
You're working with, there's a lot of coordinating here.
There's a lot of coordinating between the city and the county on Buxton.
Yeah, so if we own the road, it would be so much easier, but we don't. So, yeah, there's a lot we can do, but there's a lot of things we have to coordinate with the county as well. So that just adds another layer of bureaucracy to it. So, and you guys have got some great stuff. The meeting I attended, you're going in the right direction for sure.
Fantastic.
Okay, good questions. Is there anything else, people have for staff? Okay, if not, I believe that, that can conclude our meeting. I believe our next meeting, are we gonna, I know that we were shooting for every other month, but given the work we have to do with creating the historic district, will we have work to do next, March 27th, Erica?
Yes.
Okay, then, let's get that. Is that gonna work for everyone? We have
Yes.
a majority? Adrian, you're the only face I can actually see, like shaking your head, right? All right, well then, I will, look forward to seeing everyone on March 27th, and we can conclude this meeting over. Okay, thank you, everybody, for participating in, the questions, and especially to staff for all your work that you did. I really appreciate it. We appreciate that we're moving forward.
Thanks, Chair. Have a great night.
Thank you, bye-bye.